what a night it was. Positive start though for England with that early goal and good first half. Then Italy started to take control. How did England lose grip?
Because they're playing against a very good team. I suppose you could start with that. And Italy, probably after about 25 minutes, just started to get a grip with the game and started to, play really well, get control of possession. And that is the one, I suppose, football last night, after the game, you don't really want to go into too much analysis and tactics. But if you were analysing it, it has been an issue for England teams going back through sort of tournaments over the last 20, 30, 40 years that they do sometimes shrink back a little bit into their box, towards their box, should I say, and be a little bit deep. And then it becomes very difficult to get out from that sort of position. And we just did for quite long periods in the game, from probably about 25 minutes on to probably the end of normal time. There were periods, actually, I thought, where we were on the ropes, but then we came back off the ropes. The lads showed resilience, they hung in there. But just that little bit extra just to try and get that job done in normal time or in extra time, because I just felt once it went to penalties, if you see Donnarumma's penalty record and you see the size of him, you always know they're going to have a slight advantage there. I think we've been brilliant through the tournament, but you just couldn't get over that. We couldn't get over that last hurdle, and that's no criticism of the players, because they gave their absolute all and did everything they possibly could.
Were you satisfied with Gareth Southgate's substitutions, Gary, or would you have brought anyone on earlier?
Yeah, I mean, I saw obviously after the game, he should have made more substitutions. These players should have took the penalties. These are the same people who've been saying all the way through the tournament that he should have played a different system against Germany. He shouldn't have played Trippier against Croatia in the first game. That he should have played a more attacking system. I genuinely believe that Gareth Southgate and the players have navigated the way through to this final in the only way in which they could. And that was to be a little more pragmatic, put the two holding midfield players in front of the defence, whether it be a back four or a back five. If it needed to be a back five, it was because the shape of the other team or the quality of the other team. And he found a way to get to the final. And in football, we have purists who think that we should go out there and play all our attacking players. And to be fair, we all like to be those purists at times. But I don't think England would have gone to the final if they'd gone punch for punch with some of the nations that they had come across along the way. And I think Gareth knew that he had to play a certain way to get to the final. He did that. And like I say, at the end, it comes down to small details like penalties. But this is not a time to start criticising tactics or substitutions, because the reality of it is he's proved so many of us wrong, not just in this tournament, but over the last 2 years about decisions that he's made. It would be a nonsense, I think, to start suggesting now that we're right because he didn't get a substitution right in the final or he chose the wrong penalty taker. It would be quite ridiculous, really, when none of us have ever actually done or achieved or seen this happen before in our lifetimes.
And Gary, a lot of responsibility on the young Jadon Sancho, Bukayo Saka. And I remember last time we spoke to you on the show, you mentioned, for Saka, very young, and your experiences of being in a major tournament at a young age, and it was a lot and overwhelming. Do you feel like more experienced players could have gone ahead of them?
Do you know something? I've been to 8 major tournaments, which I've said quite a lot in the last few weeks, and I've been knocked out on penalty shootouts 5 times. And I've seen it all, by the way. I've seen it all. I've seen the one whereby the hero stands up and says, yeah, I want to take one. And I'm there looking at him thinking, I don't really want you to take one. You're not that good at them. I know it's brave of you, but you know what I mean, mate? Just sit down. And then the coach will go, the coach will go, give it to him. He wants it. And I'm like, oh, God. And then, so I've seen it all, honestly. Do you know something? They had an absolutely brilliant goalkeeper who was always going to save penalties last night. If you just said to me before the penalty shootout that Jordan Pickford would save 2, I'd say we've got a great chance. But I knew that their goalkeeper would be outstanding, and I think our players knew that. Gareth knew that. I think he's had 5 penalty shootouts and won them all. The people who take penalties in a penalty shootout, in my mind, should be the people who are most confident in putting the ball in the back of the net, who have a history of putting the ball in the back of the net in those situations, in those pressure situations. I was debating on television with Roy Keane last night. He said about you can never recreate it in training. No, you can't. But you can have a comfort in kicking the ball in the back of the net more often than others in your team. And you can be a better striker of a ball under pressure than others in your team. And I've got no doubt that Gareth and his staff will have done everything in there, will have looked at everything possible to choose the best 5 penalty takers. And the reason those 5 stood up was because those 5 were planned to stand up. And that the ones who didn't stand up aren't as good. I mean, people say about Raheem Sterling should have taken a penalty. You know, if we're really honest, Raheem's not a great striker of a football. He isn't. You know, his finishes, to be fair, are quite scruffy. He can strike a ball well, but he's not a great crosser of a ball. He's not somebody you ever have on set pieces. He's not someone who you have on penalties for his club. Jack Grealish hasn't taken one for his club for 2 years, and there'll be a reason for that. So, look, we've just got to trust in the manager. A manager who has looked at every single minute detail through this tournament and got everything so right, who will have meticulously planned this, you know, chose the 5 penalty takers because he'd done his work and his homework, and it's just not worked out. And that sometimes happens in life and in football.
Yeah, listen, we've got to ask you, Gary, about the racist online abuse aimed at Rashford, Sancho and Saka, of course, after their misses. We've seen so much unity after the last 4 weeks, but as soon as something goes wrong, the very worst of society comes out, doesn't it?
But what do you expect? What do you expect? You know, 2-3 weeks ago, we had a manager I think everybody in this country trusts, a leader who everybody in this country trusts. We had players line up for 5 days on the bounce, telling us that they were taking the knee for racism, against racism, and to promote equality. And we had high-ranking ministers, including the Prime Minister in this country, say that it's okay for our population to boo them for taking the knee against racism and promoting equality. So when it starts at the top, what do you think is going to happen underneath in life? You know, if your parents do something, the children follow. So why are we surprised by this anymore? You know, seriously, we've got to look at the roots of this. There's been so much division in this country over the last 2 or 3 years through the way in which Brexit was debated, not Brexit itself, you know, remain or leave, the actual way in which it was debated. It promotes division. The taking of the knee over last month when the players tried to explain it was to promote equality and be against racism was ridiculed by our top-ranking government officials. So when we get racist abuse after a football match at the end of a tournament, I expect it, unfortunately, because it exists and it's actually promoted by the Prime Minister, who called Muslim women letterboxes. Said they look like letterboxes. So honestly, we've got to do something about this. I keep saying it on television. I keep getting accused of having a go at the Conservative Party. It's nothing to do with Conservative or Labour or Liberal Democrat. It's to do with integrity. It's to do with doing the right thing. So, you know, it gets me wound up that we're surprised and we're talking about. Of course, I knew the minute that Bukayo Saka, Rashford and Sancho missed last night, I knew we would be waking up this morning to headlines of racist abuse. I knew that. And the people involved have to take accountability. The social media companies have to start doing something. UEFA have to start doing something. But generally, we've got to make sure that we promote inclusion, we promote equality, that we promote togetherness and have compassion generally in the way in which we live our lives. And we haven't seen that at times in the last 2 or 3 years. And like I say, the taking of the knee 2 or 3 weeks ago, I have to say it again, because I genuinely think at this moment in time we're numb with what is right and what is wrong. We don't know what's right and what's wrong anymore with misinformation, with the information that's coming at us daily. But we had a Prime Minister in this country say it was okay to boo people who are promoting equality and defending racism. Just say that to yourself in your own mirror a few times and ask yourself whether that's right. And we know it's wrong. So why do we tolerate these people?
Yeah, it can't be tolerated, Gary. Absolutely.
Please don't take that answer out of the rerun, will you? Thank you.
Gary, look, away from the negativity and that disappointment and the heartbreak of the defeat, how do you reflect upon England's Euros?
Absolutely amazing. Honestly, they've done us absolutely proud. It was everything this country needed. Those boys have brought us together, the representative of this country. I think Gareth has been absolutely fantastic in the way in which he's handled the players, the tournament, the games. I just think that obviously last night was one step too far from a football point of view, and we're all disappointed and devastated about that. You know, you see young boys and girls in the crowd crying. You knew last night was a big moment in their childhoods. You know, the families at home that will have been watching that who will remember this moment for the rest of their lives. It defines your childhood moments like this. You know, 1990 for me was something that when you see, you know, Gaza crying on the pitch, you'll never forget this moment. Stuart Pearce missing a penalty, Brian Robson scoring a goal in the '82 World Cup. These are moments that live with you forever. And what Gareth and the players have done is captured our imaginations. They've inspired us after a difficult 16 months where obviously everybody's been locked down, not just in this country. We played against an excellent Italy team who were outstanding. Congratulations to them. But I really am proud. I know proud's been used a lot in the last sort of 12 to 15 hours since the end of the game. And that is the word in which we should all be. We should all be disappointed, but we should all be incredibly proud. And I just hope that this tournament, we're a lot more mature than we were in tournaments gone past, and we don't isolate players because of missing a penalty or because they didn't take one or because of a substitution. That we get behind those lads when they enter into the Premier League grounds at the start of next season, and we demonstrate some togetherness and some compassion for people who've given their all for our country.